The Bosnian town of Tuzla is tonight braced for another big influx of Muslim refugees. A United Nations convoy is now on its way to the besieged town of Srebrenica to collect around 1,000 of the 30,000 people who are still trapped with little food and no fresh water. Meanwhile, medical staff at Tuzla are struggling to cope with those injured in yesterday's shelling of Srebrenica. Many of them are children. The attack, which killed 63 civilians, has shocked the international community and brought calls for intervention. And there was help today for another country in crisis. The Big Seven industrialised nations have earmarked around $80 billion in aid for Russia. The huge package agreed to in Tokyo aims to bolster President Yeltsin 10 days before a crucial referendum on his leadership and democratic reforms. 7 times Prime Minister, an MP for 40 years, he's Italy's most powerful post-war politician. But Giulio Andreotti could end up in the dock, accused of protecting the mafia during those years. A Senate committee is now considering lifting the former Prime Minister's immunity from prosecution.
Italy's elder statesman, mobbed by reporters as he arrived at today's Senate hearing, has been accused of being nothing less than the mafia's protector in government. Mafia informers allege that he met with their bosses on 3 occasions, that he protected their interests, and that no top-level assassination was planned without his knowledge. Mr. Andreotti has rejected the accusations as a conspiracy based on hearsay evidence provided by convicted criminals. Whether he will face trial or not depends on this jury of senators. They are currently mulling over the detailed legal report containing the allegations. The former Prime Minister has not yet been charged, but his aura of invincibility has been shattered. After 4 decades at the helm, Mr. Andreotti knew almost everyone and had many friends, including one who first served the mafiosi and was then killed by them.
Salvatore Lima, the top Christian Democrat killed last year by mafia in Palermo, he was his man in Sicily. And he was one of the shady personalities, ambiguous personalities, who joined Andreotti politically.
If the Senate decides to lift his immunity from prosecution, Europe's longest-serving statesman and the man who embodies post-war Italian politics could end up being tried as the Prime Minister who collaborated with the mafia.
Here at home, the government's claiming 3 out of 3 on its economic scorecard. It's citing success in reducing inflation and getting people off the dole. And figures today showed the GDP growing at a rate not seen for 6 years. But as Chris Wright reports, manufacturers say they can't be sure it will stay at that level.
For some, they'll always be the good old days, when buying a share meant buying a part of a growing economy. The crash changed all that. But today, the government uncovered GDP figures not seen since the heady days of the share market boom. For the last 3 months of last year, the economy grew by 1.5%. For the year, growth was 2.2%. Looking back, New Zealand grew through the 80s, reaching a peak in 1987. The latest figures put New Zealand back to where it was all those years ago. But for the government, it's not a matter of looking back, but forward.
I'm the first to say that not all New Zealanders are feeling that sense of recovery. Not all yet share in that recovery, but the overwhelming evidence is that more and more are.
Manufacturing led the way with 6% growth for the year. But now they warn there can be no more last-minute economic U-turns, as happened with the entertainment tax, if the growth is to continue.
We need to get the interest rates down to match our low inflation. We don't need any shocks from government. We need predictable cost structure, and I believe we need a predictable exchange rate.
Economists and the opposition have welcomed the growth, but both say it'll need to be higher to start reducing the numbers out of work.
It's not going to lead to some huge boom in confidence.
Much of the reason for the good figures is that the previous quarter, in winter 1992, was so bad. Then the power crisis dampened the economy. But with the election just this winter away, the government will be hoping to turn a normally cold time into a winter of content for the New Zealand voter.
The new health minister knows he has a big job ahead selling the health reforms. Today, Bill Birch laid out just how he believes the public will benefit from the changes. April Greenlaw reports.
The minister knows how important the health reforms are to his party's political future. It's his job to make the public buy them. Today he worked on that, spelling out for the first time that reforms should mean hospitals will be 10 to 20% more efficient.
We're talking about the equivalent of between 10,000 and 20,000 additional coronary bypass operations, or up to 500,000 operations to help those children with glue ear.
That hasn't convinced the opposition.
There have been enormous efficiencies in the public health system in the last 5 years. There's not much more blood to be wrung out of the stone. He's just throwing figures off the top of his head.
Ultimately, it's the patients who'll find out whose figures are right.
The American woman injured in a yachting accident at sea is now resting comfortably on a Navy frigate, the Southland, which is expected to dock in Auckland on Saturday morning. Now, Nancy Mannheimer, seen here with her sailing companions, suffered head injuries during a storm. A frigate crewman is helping to bring the dismasted yacht to Tauranga. Across the Tasman, Kiwi musicians have pipped their rivals in the Australian Recording Industry's Award for Best Group. Crowded House took the honour over several top Australian bands. Australia correspondent Pauline Hudson tunes in to the Sunnyside presentations.
The ARIA Awards is Australia's night of showing off its homegrown talent. A glamorous get-together of the who's who of the music industry. And among the finalists this year, Kiwi band Crowded House, a group Australia proudly calls its own.
Crowded House, we're with you. Access for welcome to wherever you are. One word. Baby Animals, one word.
And the winner is Crowded House.
Crowded House held out stiff competition from top Australian bands. Neil Finn saying the trophy will give his mother the opportunity to make bookends with another award he collected last year.
Thank you all.
Wendy Matthews scooped most of the awards with songs from her hit album, Lily. But it was an appearance by Australian supermodel Al McPherson that sent the audience into hysteria, her outfit proving to be the biggest hit of the evening.
It's not so much an outfit, really, as a fallout, is it? Coming up, it's a life of dedication and enormous sacrifice, culture of a different kind. 12-year-olds swap the classroom to study ballet full-time.